Okay, there we go. So anyway, thanks everybody for jumping on board on short notice, and regardless whether you're here or not, live in person, we'll be recording this and I'll be sharing it with our Facebook group so that you have a chance to review the information. Just ask Dwayne to come on board and just talk a little bit about, because I've been reading a lot of information, mainly on Facebook, that quite frankly is not true and maybe a little bit misleading. And I thought it's best that we get these guys out ahead of this stuff. It's a little late in the game, but it's better late than never. So if you guys don't mind, if you have questions during the presentation, there's a little chat box right on the bottom. You can just click on that chat box and just kind of ask a question. And if I don't understand it, I'll maybe ask you to kind of explain it. But most of the time I can just read it and I can get Dwayne. I think Larry's on here as well too, and they can answer your questions for you as well. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to Dwayne Shapka. He's one of the partners that has bought this property across the lake. The other gentleman, of course, is Larry Platt. And I just wanted to let you guys know that I've known these people for 15 or 20 years. Their business in Saskatoon was 2 doors down from my body shop. And I got to know them on a personal basis and also on a professional basis. They've done work for me, and everything that they've done has been on budget, on time. As a matter of fact, sometimes they were done before I even had the money to pay them. So thank you, Larry, for that. And anyway, I've known them for a while, so that's my connection. As I mentioned in my email that I sent out a week or so ago, I'm not financially involved in this project whatsoever. I have nothing to do with it. I just have seen some of the ideas that these guys have been kicking around, and I just think there's some great potential for the lake community. And if the environmental concerns that people were talking about were a reality, I probably would be opposed to it too, but I've yet to see anything in writing. I've heard a lot of hearsay, but I've yet to see anything in writing that says, yeah, this is going to be a problem. But without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to, I don't know who wants to talk, Dwayne or Larry. Either one of you fellas want to take it away and maybe just kind of introduce yourself and give a bit of background about what you're all about.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to listen. I'm going to let Dwayne carry the ball in terms of presenting the facts regarding the development, but just wanted to take a chance to introduce myself. So Larry Platt, thanks for being here.
All right, I'm Dwayne Shapka. Tom had asked us to kind of fill people in with some info, and so earlier today I forwarded a bit more information to the Pelican Cove and the Pebble Bay Facebook pages, just basically to, I had seen some comments here and there that were, fairly major questions that would change, our perception of any development around a lake we were at too. So we're not doing 150 backlots and things like that. So I don't know if anybody's seen it or read it, or if I'm going to be repeating all of this stuff. But I'm just going to go over the information that I shared, and then I think I don't know what else we need to discuss, so we'll open it up to questions. Most people are unaware that this property has been zoned for lakeshore development since 2011, and it was reverted back to ag use just for the passing of the new zoning bylaw and official community plan in 2020. Basically, that means that the new development, or the proposed development, the proposed lots are almost 3 times the size they could have been if the developer at that point would have carried it forward. And to be clear, his plan was for 66 lakefront lots, well, 40 some lakefront and the rest back lots. Ours currently is 22 with an average size of right around 3/4 of an acre. And council has requested that the balance of the land must remain zoned as agricultural, and it's not part of any of these proposed zoning changes. The proposed development planning is underway, but may require more slight planning changes as the application moves through the subdivision and rezoning process. Initial application was for 24 lots. And as you get through the process of subdivision, community planning, and kind of trying to forecast what some of the needs will be down the road, we've decided to dedicate a little bit more area as municipal reserve to ensure adequate lake access and parking area and stuff like that. The proposed development must go through review at many government agencies and regulatory bodies such as Fisheries, WSA, and other Ministry of Environment departments. The agencies are put in place by government to ensure environmentally responsible development is maintained. The proposed development is being very limited in terms of allowable beach development in the wetlands. Currently, our application consists of dedicating about a half a kilometer of lakeshore as environmental reserve. And to be clear, everything along the lakeshore will be dedicated as either environmental reserve or municipal reserve, meaning any work being done in that area will need to be permitted, essentially like it is everywhere else on the lake or in the province. Based on the RM of lease, OCP, and zoning bylaw, as well as WSA and community planning requirements of the day, there'll never be another development allowed on any lakes in the RM that'll be as high density developments as Pebble Bay or Pelican Cove. Those have fairly small lots and, as most of you know, continuous beachfront in front of the lakefront cabins. That's not part of the plan for this development, and nor can it be. The development is being laid out with architectural and environmental impact controls. Things like basically a covenant for anybody buying the lots that they need to, make sure they're not cutting down excess trees. There'll be clear outlines as to any kind of development happening in those MR or municipal reserve and environmental reserve areas. It's pretty typical in most lot sales, but these will be a little bit more stringent in terms of the architectural controls in terms of what you can build on that lot, and environmental controls in terms of vegetation and tree controlled cutting and things like that. Our initial proposal to the RM included a small lagoon to provide sewer service for our development through a force main sewer system. As soon as we discussed this with council, there was some interesting discussion around the lack of adequate disposal sites in the vicinity of our site. We've been told by a neighboring landowner that he frequently allows illegal dumping of septic tank refuse on his land. And as everybody knows, this is a major contributor of high nutrient runoff into the lake, increasing algae growth, and basically in line with the letter that was delivered to council this week, or last week, sorry. The lagoon is not the lagoon is essentially a solution for that problem, and it's a pretty serious problem in the RM, and they kind of let us know that early on. The proposed development includes nearly 2 acres of parking area, which would be accessible to all lake users for parking off the road for lake access. I did have a question back on Facebook there today asking what this would do. And basically the reason I wanted to bring this up is it's been talked about at the last 2 or 3 council meetings that Island View and Pelican Cove has some serious congestion issues at the boat launch. And one of the fellers from Grand Place mentioned that if we ever plan on doing a boat launch, that we should seriously consider having more of a parking area. And that's the purpose of this, was just, we don't know where we're going with that yet, but we have the land and the space here tagged for it in case it comes up. In the meantime, it's going to remain the property of the municipality to do with which as they may. And finally, this development is not being undertaken by a huge corporation. We're two families from Saskatoon who love Iroquois Lake as much as you do, and can't wait to build a responsible development in a beautiful setting for generations of enjoyment. That's the bulk of what I shared this morning, but obviously wide open for question and answer or concerns.
But one of the things, since nobody is speaking up right away, this is Tom. People have been concerned about the amount of boat traffic on the lake. And the concern is, of course, having 22 extra lots and that people would have more boats on the lake. I don't know, this weekend I was there, folks, and even though the beaches were very busy, I honestly didn't see a lot of boat traffic. But how do you guys think that'll be impacted at your place as far as boat traffic if this project goes ahead?
I think the short answer, Tom, would be that, we're adding, Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong on my numbers here, because you're more up to speed with this than me, but we're adding less than 10% more cabins to the lake. And, I was actually on the lake myself this weekend, and I don't think there was more than 30 boats out there at any time. That might be high. Today there was far less than that. And so if we maintain those ratios, it's pretty minor variable. If there's another boat or two on that lake, or three, it's really, I think, probably pretty insignificant compared to just the random traffic that's naturally going to land there from Saskatoon or nearby communities, because it's a close drive. So I have a hard time thinking that that's a significant, there's going to be any significant impact from that.
Right. One of the things that was brought up, Larry, was on a boat launch that a person could put like a gate or whatever, where you get a pass key or a little credit card thing, machine or whatever. If you guys put a boat launch in, if you were able to somewhere, is that what you would be looking at, doing something like that?
I think absolutely. These things cost money, and they have to be maintained. They cost money to build. They have to be maintained properly. And I'm not sure how you handle that at Pelican Cove right now, but I'll be honest. If you wanted a $10 gate toll, I mean, it wouldn't be an issue from my perspective going there to launch a boat. And I don't think most people would. I mean, when you head out to the lake, you're probably going to spend 20 or 30, or if you drive a wake boat, a lot more than that, I suppose. I don't know that, but I think it's fairly expensive in terms of getting out on the lake in general. So $10 isn't a game changer, and it could entirely change how you can manage or afford to provide that service. So I think that's a good idea.
Probably wouldn't hurt where we are. We're only a mile off the main highway, and we certainly get a lot of traffic to our lake because it's free, and it is a nice little lake that people can get access to either from Saskatoon or Prince Albert. Just a couple questions that showed up, a couple comments. This is from Amanda. She said, is the lagoon to service just your lots, or is it a larger plan now? And if so, where will it be located?
It will definitely serve significantly more than just our lots. That's been a request at this point from the RM Council of us. So it's definitely going to serve service to larger community, probably to the tune of more like 120 seasonal cabin. That's going to be the volume kind of basis that it's designed around from our conversations so far.
Great. And
now, it is important to understand. I mean, we've gone on record and said we're committed to build this. The lagoon itself is a separate permit application. It's a separate process. And that will follow once the development is approved. And it can't start prior to that because frankly, there's significant design and planning costs that are attached to it. So that will start immediately following subdivision approval.
So just to clarify, I'm going to ask another question. Is it written in the development plan or is it just in discussion stages? I think it originally was, but it was muddying the waters a little bit or something. I'm not sure what.
Well, it's not specifically in the development plan. It's written though. It is written in the council minutes. And it is a, definitely forms part of our agreement. It's just it is a separate permit and application process that has to be gone through. There are some things that are out of our control in the approvals and planning process, which we can commit to being willing to do something, but it still has to go through all of the proper channels and approvals and regulatory bodies. So it is a process that has to follow.
And that would be not part of the development, but it would be on the agricultural land. Is that correct?
That's right. It's sorry, Larry, I'm going to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Basically, that the lagoon was taken off the plan for the subdivision application because it's not part of the subdivision application, and it can't be on lakeshore development land or residential land. It has to remain on the ag quarter or the ag portion of the quarter, and it's a discretionary use for that. It's a discretionary use as a part of that zoning. So we took it off the plan right now to save the confusion, because as soon as community planning or somebody like that sees it, it's kind of a weird thing. It's not going to fit into the zoning that we're going for. So we're better off to leave it off at this point and go for discretionary use application, and it'll remain on the backside of the ag land.
Right. We got another question here from Heather. As a development company, are you currently in any other development projects or have been in any in the past? If so, where?
We haven't developed land ourselves. We are involved in developments all the time. Our primary business is a general contracting business, and we do majority of our work in the infrastructure services, building water treatment plants, sewage treatment plants, lagoon systems, etc., as well as commercial and industrial buildings. So we're involved in construction and in process of development on a daily basis.
Right. So as far as your own development, you can do the infrastructure there, but you're not building the homes. Is that correct?
The jury's out on that, but I think the current answer would be we don't expect to build all the homes there ourselves. We're not home builders, so it would take a different level of effort for us to engage in that we're not certain we have the time for, quite frankly, not to do it well. So.
Right. So another question from Amanda here. She's asking, so do you own the land already?
Yes, we do.
So what happens if this proposal doesn't go ahead? What's your position from there?
Well, whatever we choose to do, I guess it's to be determined.
But you'll have your own home there, I would assume.
Well, that would absolutely be the intention. Yes.
Yeah. So you just have a great big backyard. I get it. Okay.
Yeah. Or you know what? We think the property is beautiful, but our intention would be that we would like to have some community there too.
There's a comment here about the bridge, and that's a thing that has popped up from time to time, guys. Like they were talking about, did you see the traffic on the poor old bridge? What will happen? And so if you guys got any ideas about traffic on the road and how your development will affect that, or if you guys are looking at any solutions, or does there need to be a solution?
Well, that was a kind of a part of that extra 2 acres that we were dedicating as MR on the south side, right against the grid road. It's a little bit further to walk, but it's not a real long ways to the bridge and to the shallows there for additional parking areas. So it's the closest we can get to it from the property we own. So that was the other part of that dedication purpose.
So the idea is that the RM maybe put a byline that no parking on that roadway. If you want to go fishing, park in the parking lot and walk back. I would assume it would have to be done. Okay, sure. Sorry, Amanda, I missed up on your question there, but she said, I meant, do you own the land for the lagoon? Is what she was asking. Sorry.
There's room on the agricultural portion of the land to have adequate setback from the lake, which is a requirement of any lagoon development. You have to be a certain number of meters away. Pardon me, the lake is one thing, but the residence is actually the way that it's written. So it's actually further back than from the lake. So yeah, yes, the short answer is there's room on our land for the lagoon to be located.
A question here from Brandon, who's a new resident to Pelican Cove. And he was saying, how is this development going to benefit the existing developments of Pelican Cove and Pebble Bay?
I guess one significant way would be, I'm not sure what the agreements are for those 2 communities for septic disposal, but certainly I know there's a couple of guys in Pebble Bay that I've spoken with that pay crazy fees for disposal, and this certainly should help that.
Are there benefits at all?
Well, what Dwayne mentioned in his letter, certainly, again, back to the lagoon component of this, there are practices happening in the RM that are not WSA compliant. We know that. And the lagoon would help to mitigate the risks that are associated with some of the application that's been happening in terms of raw land application of sewage, septic waste. So that's absolutely a benefit. And I guess the other thing I'd say is historically, when properties are developed well in an area, the other properties that are adjacent or existing absolutely changes the value of everyone's properties in a good way. So I can't imagine that that's not going to be a result of this as well.
Great. And I suppose too, Larry, that with the more ratepayers on the lake, there's more opportunity for collaboration, whether it's if we were able to build a marina or another boat launch, or if there's other projects we could work on together. I think you guys are open to that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely we are. We're here, like Dwayne's letter again addressed that. I mean, we're here personally to build things, cabin development for our families to be at. We're community oriented people. We are in our business. We're going to be the same. We are in our lives, and we're going to be the same when we're residents at the lake. So, and frankly, we like helping with developing things. So we enjoy it. So, is there opportunity to work together on a marina or something like that in the future? we'd be more than open to discuss that and be part of that. You know, that type of thing is always something we're willing to discuss and participate in.
There's a comment from Heather here. She's saying that everyone at Pelican Cove and Pebble Bay already have the use of a lagoon already. I've heard that lagoon is running end of life potentially. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know what to believe because I just heard it, right? So
Yes,
do you guys know anything about that?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Tom.
No, I just say, do you guys know anything about that, or where they're at? Like, why is the RM asking if you guys can build that one? Is that their situation they're in right now, that they're running out of space where they are?
From what we understand, there's pressure on all of the lagoons in the area in terms of their capacity. And the lagoon that is being utilized by the hauler that picks up from Pelican Cove and Pebble Bay hauls into a lagoon that's located in the RM of Spiritwood. And the RM of Spiritwood residents will always have first dibs on that lagoon. So and I confirmed that with the RM of Spiritwood directly. So as things progress over time, there's going to be a shortage of lagoon capacity without question. There's also some other lake developments in the RM that don't utilize a lagoon, and it's causing stress on both the community of Shell Lake, the town of Shell Lake, as well as the Mistawasis Reserve lagoons. So there's absolutely a need for it. It's significant, and it's a very important environmental issue that has to be managed properly.
There's a comment here. I think this is from Brennan as well. Is anything being done, reported regarding the illegal dumping in the neighboring property?
From what we understand, WSA is aware of the situation, and they're working on it.
Okay. I know I've driven to the lake from Saskatoon, and I've noticed that there's been trucks out in the fields adjacent to the highway spreading sewage, raw sewage. And I did ask Larry, the guy that does our stuff, is that what you do? He was almost flabbergasted. He said, absolutely not. You're not supposed to do that.
It is an old school practice.
Yeah.
If it's done properly with the right equipment, it's not a problem. But the right equipment is a lot more than a truck that dumps on the fields. It actually, the WSA requirements are that anything that's dumped on a field is tilled in within a minimum period of time. So if you see somebody dumping and using a tilling type application system immediately, they're doing it properly. If they aren't doing it that way, and you don't see a tractor on that field within 72 hours or whatever, I'm not exactly aware of it, that timeline, but it's short to that effect, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
And the concern with that is all related to nutrient runoff, because a big rainfall following that will wash the waste off the fields. Or more significantly, if anybody dumps like that, when the fields, once the ground starts to freeze, that's an absolute no-no by WSA regulations.
Great. Okay. I'm not getting too many other questions on the chat line here, but there's a couple of things that I read recently. There's big concern about the weed bed in front of the property there, that a university professor has written a thesis or whatever on the lake, and he claims that if that weed bed is messed with or destroyed, that would be catastrophic results on the lake. Interesting to note that both Pelican Cove and Pebble Bay have already decimated their weed beds, so I guess it's okay. But for back then, but today it isn't, right? Like, you guys are bound by today's guidelines. as
100,
opposed to,
yeah, 100% we're bound by those guidelines. And it is a rigorous process to take this through community planning. We receive correspondence from multiple agencies and government bodies regarding it. They're all reviewing it, and they're all considering the environmental impact of the development.
Right.
And in addition to that, and again, Dwayne's letter did address that, but you know, the amount of beach that we're allowed to put in is very limited, and any development that went in would be very different than a development like Pelican or Pebble Bay in terms of what they're allowed to do.
times have changed. Like back in the day, people would just go out in their canoes and chop away. Now you can't do that. I mean, I live right in front of a weed bed at Pelican Cove, and I've gone through water security and I've secured a permit where I can, I think it's 3 meters or 4 meters I can cut on either side of my dock. And I will be doing some this year. So if anybody from Pelican Cove sees me out there cutting reeds in the next little while, you can call water security, but I have the papers and everything that allow me to do that. And it, like Larry says, it is a bit of a process. Like you just don't go out and start whacking away. You have to let them know in advance. I phoned water security last week to say, if it's not too hot, I'll be out this week. Otherwise, it'll be next week. And so I intend to kind of trim up the edges. We're trying to make room for the public docks at our beach, Larry, by moving our dock a little further north. And but I can't touch it until after July 1st. So lots of different guidelines that everybody has to adhere to.
Yeah.
As far as you guys have done quite a bit of work with water security that you kind of went over and above. Like we were talking about the 500-year flood level. We had to build our house like a meter above ground because according to the 500-year flood level, we had to do that. Now, apparently that's changed. Is there any other things that they mentioned? Like what is the overall health of the lake compared to, I suppose other lakes in the area? Did they give you any indication of that?
Dwayne, I'll let you answer that. I know you talked to aquatic habitat people.
Yeah, like they don't give us a whole lot of information, and I haven't, like, the information that I do get back through the subdivision process happens as it goes through all the other departments. So we've heard back from Heritage Resource, endangered species, I think. There's a few other ones that we've heard back from and we've had official communication with. I've had phone calls with WSA about the application, and so I haven't seen anything back in writing from him as to exactly what our restrictions are and what they're going to let us do and what they're not going to let us do. It sounded like it's actually an on-site meeting for some of this stuff to kind of establish where the boundaries are and what they're going to allow us to do. In terms of lake health, I have had communication back from the biologist in charge of the lake, from fisheries, and all indications are that it's got a self-sustaining, healthy fish stock so far that is reproducing at adequate levels. However, they haven't done a spawning study or a fish study since 2014, and it was due, I think it was due this summer, but they didn't book it because of COVID and there was a bunch of mess going on. So it'll be coming right away. And in her correspondence, it was noted that there's significant angling pressure just because of the proximity to the city and stuff like that. But as for lake health, I guess that's, to me, lake health is the health of your fish stock. So it appears that all systems are good.
So just in regards, I think you and I talked about this a while ago, Dwayne, that in terms of density, like if you look at Iroquois Lake compared to, say, something like Martin's Lake that's been around, my neighbor Bill Dick used to go and hang out there when he was a kid. So we're talking 40, 50 years ago. He said it was very busy back then. And I assume it's even more now. What would the density be at Martin's Lake compared to Iroquois Lake today?
And what I've got it all written down here somewhere. I believe actually, I think it was Martin's it's basically a 10th the size of Iroquois. Because we did just a simple density study on every lake in the RM, and Martin's. Sorry, I'm just opening folders here trying to find it.
I'm pretty sure when you and I talked, it was pretty close to 1/10. And then if you looked at Emerald and I think it's Big Shell, I'm not sure.
No, I did. It was Lac La Pêche,
Lac La Pêche, right?
Lac La Pêche, just the ones in this RM.
Right.
Lac La Pêche, Martin's, and Emerald.
Yeah.
I don't know
The
where it is.
thing with both Emerald and Martin's Lake, they are like a regional park or whatever. So maybe there's a lot more people that go there just to camp out. But and like there's people saying we don't really want our lake to end up like that. But I think we're quite a ways away from that type of density.
Yeah, so I found where it is here. So the way to do it, like I got all the info from title info, or lot info was from ISC online platform, and then campsites were available from published information on the Saskatchewan Regional Parks website. Martin's Lake comprised of 298 acres, 7.5 kilometers of shoreline, and it had a density of, so total potential occupied sites is 246. That includes campsites and like cabin lots.
Right.
And it had a density of, well, and that's probably the worst example. Martin's Lake has a density of 1.21 acres of lake area per site. Emerald Lake is 1.62. La Pêche is 3.07. And Iroquois is 10.38, including the proposed development.
I'm sorry, what was the density at our lake?
10.38. And that's good, like give or take, right? It's all drawn out in CAD, like a surveyed plan of the lake. So it's all measured and calculated that way, but rising water levels and fluctuations and stuff that number could go down a little bit, but it's obviously nowhere near Martin's and Emerald and La Pêche.
No, not even on the same plane at all.
Right. And this is the point, I think, like Amanda just made a comment here, says exactly, we're glad our lake is the way it is and we don't want it to get there. But under the current guidelines, do you think we would ever get close to that number?
It's impossible.
It's
literally impossible. If you were to apply the OCP guidelines, and then you also were to take a look at the existing land designations around the lake. Dwayne, how many parcels meet the lake?
There's 25 quarters of land that are undeveloped. Sorry, there's 25 quarters of land that aren't Pelican Cove or Pebble Bay, and 11 of them are wildlife habitat protected. And I think there's 4 or 5 that are cleared for ag use and obviously not so conducive to development, coupled with the fact that, you know, they're not adjacent to any decent roadways or services that way. So I had kind of figured out there's maybe three quarters of land that were reasonably developable in the future.
Yeah, and that's the other element you do need to consider when you're looking at that or thinking about it, is if anybody is going to do any kind of development, there's some elements that make or break whether that's a viable thing to even consider. And you know, some of the things that are most significant that way are, of course, can you access this land, or do you have to build, you know, 3-4 miles of road or a couple miles of road to make it happen? And then the costs relative to bringing in the services that are required are also very, very significant. So access and proximity to grid road is very, very significant, and whether any land is viable for redevelopment in the future.
Heather had a comment, says, but the RM wants to change that. Do they not? When they open up this area, does that mean that these other 3 quarters potentially could be developed, notwithstanding the cost of infrastructure, roads and power and gas and all that stuff?
Well, I guess a comment that I could make to that is this: the bylaw that we're asking to be changed is less than a year old. So was there a crazy amount of development around the lake prior to 2020? And the answer is no. There's not that many real decent quarters of land that are conducive to development around the lake. And so that's a big part of this, was this property was zoned for lakeshore development and had to be reverted back for the RM to change their bylaws. And so we're asking them to change it, to open it up enough so that we can make the change that we want to do here, and whatever they do after that is up to them.
If you read the OCP, it is always at the discretion of council. And to get a development through, from a developer's perspective, to get a development through community planning process and all of the different bodies in the government, it is a very rigorous process. The reason that land doesn't get developed very readily is that it's really expensive to get it through the process, and it's hard to find the right land to make that possible.
Great. Comment here from Kevin. He said, so no real benefit to Pelican Cove or Pebble Bay, just more traffic. And I'll answer part of that, Kevin. I am on the board for the Pelican Cove Hamlet, and you know, I see some great opportunities down the road for collaboration on things like the boat launch and the parking by our boat launch, which also affects Island View, which is actually not part of the hamlet. And I'm looking towards these guys, and I'm hoping that if this development goes ahead, that we can find an alternative to the existing boat launch that we have and the parking lot that we have, whether it's on that 2 or 3 acres of land near the south part of their property, or whether it's someplace else. Like the hamlet itself, we operate on right now. I think we're getting about 60% of our tax revenue, of half of our tax revenue. So our budget yearly is probably about $56,000 to $60,000 a year, something like that. We're not going to be buying any land too quick, and you know, even if we get grants and that kind of stuff. But if we had another entity that was involved, especially somebody like these guys that actually have the resources and the infrastructure equipment behind them, it would make it a lot easier to happen. It still has to go through community planning and all that kind of stuff, and the environmental stuff. But one question that he mentioned on there, guys, Larry and Dwayne, just more traffic. And that's a recurring theme I keep hearing about: more traffic, more traffic, more traffic. Have you guys given any thought, like, you know, what can be done? Like, what are you guys from the highway? Is it 2 miles, 3 miles? I don't even know what the exact distance is.
I think it's about 2.5 kilometers.
2.5 kilometers?
Yeah.
what's your take on it? I mean, is there, can they do like, do they take asphalt, cold asphalt and press it in there? Can they, I mean, what can be done to get that road safer and more usable and less dusty? Have you guys considered that?
I can't say that we've specifically considered that. That wouldn't be correct. So, but I guess what I would say is, the more ratepayers there are in a vicinity, the more possibilities you can work something out with the RM.
Right. Yeah, like Amanda made a comment about calcium chloride, and Amanda, just so you know, we've been doing some studies on the calcium chloride, and we're trying to keep it away from the lake as much as possible. And there's quite a stretch of that road there that's adjacent to the lake on both sides. So we probably look at that as a last ditch resort.
I mean, I can comment that I know that in the industry, there's plenty of experimenting being done with environmentally friendly dust control measures and soil stabilization measures. I mean, lots of those things are in development because these are challenges in many locations. So, and the, anything related to the environment is definitely something that gets extra attention in this day and age, and that's fair. So there's lots of work that is being done on that in the industry. I know that for sure.
Yeah. The key thing, Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's a lot easier for all working together towards a solution, because that traffic on the road is there. It's going to add maybe another 22 cars a weekend. I don't know. I'm finding I've been at the lake now for about 7 years, and it's getting busier and busier because it is close to Saskatoon. It is close to Prince Albert, and I think it's kind of one of those little gems that I never even heard of it 8 years ago. And now everywhere I go, everybody seems to know about Iroquois Lake. I don't know that we're going to see less people whether this development is there or not. I think it's a destination place for a lot of people because it's accessible, it's free, it's got decent fishing, it's got decent water. I know that some of the comments earlier, guys, were that it was an unusually quiet weekend for a July long weekend. But I'm there lots of times during the middle of the week, and there's seldom a boat seen on the lake. I mean, the summertime is an intense time for everybody. Everybody wants to get to the lake, but the rest of the time, other than weekends, to me, it's still pretty quiet. Anyway, there's another question from Karen. I'm sorry I missed that earlier, Karen. She wants to know, will you have your own public beaches, boat launches, and fillet shack, so we're not sharing with even more people? Have you guys given any thought to that at all?
Yeah, we
Well, I
have.
think.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Wayne.
Well,
Go ahead.
I think there's there's an application, and well, I guess there needs to be some interest from the RM on that. We have discussed it briefly with council. The place for it would be along the road allowance, which is that kind of that side of the lake, or that right where we've got the chunk of municipal reserve for them. So, it would be something that we would have to work through with council to make sure that it's palatable for everybody. And
Yeah, I would say to add to that, council and WSA, like,
yeah,
some of these things we could tell you right now, this is our intention 100%, but these things aren't just up to us. Like, again, it comes back to the people that review it from an environmental perspective and all of the other components that are part of it. They have to be on board with it and agree to it before we could say, yes, it's going to happen. So, but is our intention to do that? Yes, it is.
Great. Yeah, we could speculate on a lot of things, right, Larry? It's just, it's still.
We just want to be careful not to leave somebody with the wrong impression. Like, these are our intentions, and the approval processes can result with something different. And in this particular case, it could be less, but we hope that it should be achievable. And from our preliminary conversations with WSA, specifically regarding beach and specifically regarding boat launch, it sounds like they are open to those discussions. It was definitely not a hard no or anything like that. So we're positive that we feel positive that those will go the right direction. It's going to take some time because they have to be thoroughly reviewed and they have to be done right when they do go in. So.
Okay. I'm not getting any other questions here. Is anybody else got anything you want to add or ask these gentlemen? There's a new message. So do not have an answer for this. So it could be potentially stuck with even more people using our resources. Well, that's Heather, we're going to have more people using the resources, whether there's a development there or not. I think we're seeing that at our lake, and we will see a lot more people fishing for sure. It is crown land, basically that lake. Once you're on the lake, it's wide open for everybody. Unless, like Jeff says, we become a regional park and put a gate at the entranceway, and I don't think it's going to change. A lot of the extra traffic that we're having is here because of COVID, because of proximity. Maybe we've got to quit telling people what a great place it is. I don't know, but certainly in the time that I've been there, I've seen an uptick. Like this is probably the busiest I've seen the beach in a while. But you also got to realize, I think we have a lot more young families with small children. And quite frankly, I thought it was great. It's a great weekend to be at the lake. So, anything else? Oh. Pardon me, I had to clear my throat. Okay. So there's concern, guys, that more people, environment, all that kind of stuff. From your point of view, and I've known you guys for a long time, I know that you're looking at doing a sustainable development that falls within the current guidelines, which are far stricter than anything that either Pebble Bay or Pelican Cove had to deal with. There's probably lots of areas around our lake. I know that there's a creek coming into our lake that is on farmland that who knows what is around that creek. I know that on your side, there's watersheds and waterland there where there's cattle operations. There's so many areas, like if you start peeling back the layers, there's lots of work to be done on the environmental stuff. But you guys are stuck in the planning stages and having to adhere to all that already. It's not like you can go back and say, I want to be like Pebble Bay or Pelican Cove, right? So you don't have a lot of choice. You got to do it right or you can't do it right. Oh, somebody, and this is me, Amanda. I mentioned about bringing the internet in. And, basically, Dwayne, you and I talked about that earlier today, about what the potential there is for high-speed internet.
Yep. Yeah, we've had discussions with the reputable independent internet service provider. They have a little different model than they're a little different size than a SaskTel or a TELUS or some of those guys. They buy bandwidth from major centers and they basically get the bandwidth to the pockets of population. So I've had discussions with them as recently as this morning, and they're still looking at it. And that's definitely not a quick process. There's all kinds of frequency applications and a whole bunch of stuff they got to look at before they get to the point of actually doing anything. And just to be clear, that's not something that Larry or I are directly involved with. It just happens to be some fellas that I happen to know really well. So
the potential is there.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. Well, we've been online for just about an hour here. If people have questions, can they contact you guys? Like, do you mind if they give you a call or email you? Would that work for you guys? I know you don't want to take 8 million phone calls, but, or would you consider coming out and speaking in person in the community or surrounding area?
I'm not opposed to anything if it's, as long as it's cordial and everybody just wants some information.
Yeah.
No problem.
And I got to say, go ahead, Larry.
We do, Dwayne, we do have a website that you can post questions on, don't we?
Oh, not yet. We've got all we've got is like a Facebook page right now.
Okay.
And that,
But
I guess,
you're welcome to put questions on there, that's for sure.
yeah.
What's the Facebook page? Is it Woodlands Development? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I shared it this morning on the Pelican Cove website. So you can definitely go on there.
Yeah.
Our main concern with wanting to provide, to do this today, Tom, was just to make sure that people had accurate, truthful information. So, and we're happy to be direct and honest with any of our answers. If people have more questions, so we're welcome those anytime.
And thanks everybody that's been on the call. You've all been very respectful and very great. I know some people get a little emotional about issues like this, and I appreciate you guys taking time to put your questions up on the chat box, and hopefully this peeled back a curtain a little bit so you guys have a better idea of what's going on potentially on the other side of the lake. So good. Larry and Dwayne, thank you very much for your time, and get you get back to your families. Thanks everybody for taking time. I'll get this recording done as soon as I figure out how to transform it into a YouTube channel site, and I'll get it out to everybody so you can watch it when you get time. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.